Reports have revealed that convicted sex offender and chemical attacker Abdulazadi was given a Muslim burial, despite being given asylum after converting to Christianity.
Yes, new court documents reveal the chemical attacker was granted asylum, even though the judge knew there were concerns about him being a proven liar.
So, do these new revelations undermine the entire asylum process? And how does it damage the reputation of Christian churches?
Well, joining us now is priest in charge at Holy Trinity in Winchester and host of the Irreverent podcast, Father Jamie Franklin. Thank you very much for joining us, Jamie. Now, there's been a big blame game when it comes to this case. People blaming the government, the Home Office, the Church of England for allowing the conversion and for backing the asylum case here. And also, who else have we blamed? The police, perhaps. So, Jamie, what do you make of this? And has this damaged the reputation of the Church of England? We know the Archbishop of Canterbury is looking into an investigation.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think, it doesn't look good, obviously. One thing I would say at the beginning, though, is that I find it hard to understand why people are blaming the Church of England for this, because this happened in the context of a Baptist church. The minister involved was a man called Reverend Roy Merrin. This has been widely reported in the Telegraph and elsewhere. It was actually a Baptist church minister, and it was a Baptist church context in which Yazidi was allowed to known that he was a convicted sex offender. He'd been convicted of sexual assault and exposure. These are just facts about what was going on at the time. So it was actually Reverend Roy Merrin and that context there. And then it was the Reverend Roy Merrin who actually supported his application for asylum in this country. So it was in the context of the Baptist Church, not the Church of England. The Church of England, perhaps has a role to play insofar as it's promoting this sort of liberal progressive agenda around immigration in quite a public and visible way. But in this context, definitely not the Church of England's fault. There has also been massive amount of miscommunication between the Home Office and the tribunal that vindicated Yazidi. The Home Office knew about, the tribunal that allowed his asylum application to go through. The Home Office knew that this guy was a sex offender and that he was dangerous as well. So it's a failure on a state and legislative level as well as anything else. So I think the blame can be widely shared around. But in this instance, I would say it's not actually the fault of the Church of England.
And also the judge too, who ruled in his favour despite what I would call overwhelming evidence that this man was lying.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, to me, this speaks to the broader context of this entire conversation. It's a source of frustration, I think, to many, many people, including lots of just ordinary parishioners in Church of England churches and Christians elsewhere, that the kind of people who represent the hierarchical echelons of the church don't seem to get the concerns that ordinary people have around immigration. These people are not racist. They don't hate people from other nations. They just want a sensible conversation around this issue, in the same way as you wouldn't allow anyone to just walk into your house and behave however they wanted in front of your family members. So we shouldn't allow just anyone to come into the country, anyone and everyone to come into the country and to behave however they want, just because they make the claim that they are fleeing persecution or that they're in need or whatever it might be. That we need to have a sensible grown-up conversation about this where both sides of this story are considered. And the government, I would hasten to add, have a duty to protect the population of their own nation, as well as let's say, a burden of care for people who might want to come here to seek asylum or to seek refuge. And in this case, we badly failed these people, this mother and her daughters who have had their lives upended through this horrific attack, a chemical attack upon them through this man who should not have been roaming around in our country. So this is absolutely disgraceful. And I hope it moves the conversation in a positive direction as a result.
Perhaps more of the focus needs to be on the judge and that judgment rather than the inputs that went into that judgment. Just on the fact that that Abdulazadi seems to have had a Muslim burial, should he have?
Well, I don't know. I don't know from a sort of moral perspective or a legal perspective, but I think what it shows is that the Reverend Roy and whoever else was involved from a Christian perspective were either utterly duped by this man and were taken for fools or were actually duplicitous in what happened and knew this bloke wasn't a Christian and that he was in fact a Muslim, but supported his application anyway, which would be incredibly dishonest. And I don't know which is the case. But either way, it is pretty shocking, I would say. And also, one does wonder if this kind of thing is happening more broadly. I mean, look, I don't live in an area where this kind of thing happens. I'll be honest. I live in the south in Winchester. This isn't happening here. But is this happening elsewhere in the country? Do we have vicars and ministers up and down the country using this loophole as a way of supporting people's asylum application when they very well know that these people
Jamie,
aren't Christians?
we know that 40, or at least a couple dozen, a few dozen, on the Bibi Stockholm barge were looking to
suddenly
convert.
deciding that they're going to be Christians.
So it's certainly not the only case where there may be very quick conversions done.
As I say, they're either dupes or they're duplicitous. It's one of the two, isn't it? It's not particularly. It doesn't speak in their favour, let's say, as ministers, that they would either allow themselves to be fooled or actually be dishonest in this case. But there we go.
You speak a lot of sense, Father Jamie Franklin, host of the Irreverent podcast. I like the pun there. Thank you very much for joining us here on Good Afternoon Britain.